The Unicorn's Tale by David Franklin. The following is based on an actual story, though not necessarily a true actual story. Some parts of it are true, and some parts I have made up, in hopes of creating a book interesting enough for people to want to buy. Which parts are which, I'll leave for you, dear reader, to decide for yourself. Beginning with this paragraph. Any similarities between this story and actual unicorns currently living in Europe and owned by farm girls named Amethyst are entirely coincidental. Chapter 1. On the Methods and Manners of Unicorns. Unicorns are believed by most people to be extinct, or the products of children's imaginations. In this first point, most people are wrong, and in this second point, well, you will see. It has been suggested by some of the more learned people among us, who have usually also been some of the more serious people among us, that unicorns never existed in the flesh, and that they are merely legends inspired by other animals that have a single horn. That is an understandable mistake. Given the similarities between unicorns and other single-horned animals, the differences can sometimes be hard to detect. For example, see if you can identify the differences in the following pictures. There is a picture of a unicorn labeled unicorn. There is then a picture of a rhinoceros, labeled not a unicorn. Both pictures are black and white. Were you able to spot the difference? That's right! The unicorn has purple eyes! Nice catch for someone inexperienced enough not to skip over a section called On the Methods and Manners of Unicorns. Other people have suggested that unicorns may have existed before the great flood of Noah in the Bible, but that the unicorns that were chosen to have ridden the waves in Noah's Ark were in fact delayed by an especially tasty-looking patch of wild strawberries, and therefore missed the boat, ending forever the graceful and noble line of the four-horned, meaning before-horned. This suggestion is also wrong, as there were in fact two nearly perfect unicorns, Tychra and his mate Gensella, on the Ark, and they have been largely overlooked in the story for millennia, largely because they, unlike the monkeys, who might have been tossed overboard had Noah been able to catch them up in the rafters, were so well behaved that they never caused a moment's trouble for Noah or his family, and were therefore never mentioned in the story at all. And so it was that the line of unicorns was saved, and that every unicorn down to the present day is descended from the nearly perfect lineage of Tychra and Gensella. By the Middle Ages, footnote. It may be useful at this juncture to point out that they didn't call it the Middle Ages back then, because there hadn't been any ages after it yet to make it the Middle Ages. They most often referred to it as the exceedingly recent ages, which has since been shortened to our modern word era, or more simply, yesterday. End of footnote. By the Middle Ages, it was widely believed that having a unicorn at the lead of an army meant almost certain victory. This is also wrong. That bit of malarkey arose from two characteristics of unicorns. The first characteristic is that unicorns hardly ever reproduce. This meant that throughout the ages of castles and kings, there were precious few unicorns about at any given moment. This made verifiable unicorn sightings exceedingly rare. In fact, sightings were so rare that most people came to believe that the noble beasts existed only in legends, like the Loch Ness Monster or honest politicians, and weren't real at all. Naturally, that being the age of fairy tales, the simple people of that time assumed if any such mystical creatures did exist, they must surely have tremendous magical powers. The unicorns, not the politicians. The second characteristic is that unicorns have tremendous magical powers. These powers, however, did not usually help one army to defeat another, since unicorns are decidedly against people deliberately hurting each other, unless one side is especially good, and the other side is especially evil. Only in such cases would a unicorn, like the Swiss Army, make an exception to its policy of strict neutrality. Though these delicate creatures, unicorns, not the Swiss Army, were not well suited to pulling plows or wagons, they would, on a good day, have little trouble carrying a king in full battle armor. Most people who were not kings, however, and were not consumed by thoughts of wars and weaponry, would never think of putting a saddle on such a lithe and beautiful creature. Oh, again, the unicorns, not the king. It was true, however, that aside from the presence of the horn and a general impression of betterness that unicorns cast, they very closely resembled the common farm horse. This fact was not overlooked by King Pliny the Wily, who, in an effort to secure victory for castle and country, attempted to intimidate an opposing army by strapping a fake horn onto the forehead of his draft horse, Feldspar. Regrettably, the fake horn began to loosen in the heat of battle, until it had slipped badly and was mounted to the side of the horse's head like one handlebar of a bicycle. The valiant and clever, though ridiculous looking at this point, with a fake horn protruding from the side of his head, the valiant and clever horse turned his head sharply to avoid a blow from an enemy. The move was a very good one for the horse Feldspar, for he avoided a well-aimed blow from a large and dangerous foe. But it was a very bad one for Pliny, who ended up being stabbed in the shoulder with the fake horn, knocked to the ground, and as a result, lost the battle and his kingdom. Thus, with one swift motion of a horse's head, did Pliny lose his kingdom and have his name changed to Pliny the Unfortunate. Although unicorns are among the most blessed of the four-footed, they do not multiply readily or often. They, like people, must have 3 things to thrive: food, safety, and love. And strawberries. Okay, that's 4 things. Horses are herd animals. They crave the company of other horses. Unicorns, being a higher species, require something more: a deep soul connection with a human being. Without it, they are as incomplete as a barbarian without his battle axe. Once established, this connection between human and beast will grow and strengthen over time, like a young tree growing in its connection with the earth. This continues until breaking the connection would be... well, it wouldn't be pretty, you can bet the farm on that. The connection affects both the human and the unicorn, though it affects the four-horn more deeply and in more obvious ways. This is why a unicorn will not attach strongly to an evil person, and if it has begun to do so in error, it will break the connection and seek out a purer heart to love. The breaking of the connection can be quite traumatic for the unicorn, especially if the connection was allowed to grow for a time before the unicorn discovered the true nature of the one he or she had chosen. Though their nobility shines brightest when defending or nurturing their humans, unicorns are tender and tremulous animals when alone. This has long been a source of great difficulty for the beautiful creatures. They have such slight constitution and such advanced intelligence that putting them to work is usually out of the question. The reason for this is simple. They were created to serve a different function than their plow horse or war horse cousins. Because they were not suited for such uses as a farmer would need, and preferred to eat grain and strawberries. Have I mentioned the strawberries? That would otherwise go toward feeding animals that pulled their weight on a farm. Unicorns were turned out into the forests to fend for themselves. Over time, their difficulty surviving without close human contact, and their exceptionally polite behavior, caused the unicorn to all but disappear from human experience. Removing a unicorn's horn can be painful for the corn, especially if it is cut too close to the head. The horn will grow back, however, sometimes at an incredible rate. You don't want to be standing in the way, once the creature has established the required trust relationship with its human. So ends the introductory background information. Thank you for your attention. Now, on to the story.